Right. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you, Frankie, for this wonderful opportunity. So I am here to speak on the impact of AI on politics and democratic processes. My name is Nnenna Kalu-Ude. Right. Right. So I am a data protection professional with a legal background. I was called to the Nigerian bar as a barrister solicitor of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. I have over 14 years of experience in public service. I worked at the Ministry of Justice for a bit in Nigeria, where I was supporting the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation in election petition matters. And I was also a legal aid council community member. After that, I transitioned to corporate law, and then I did a bit of consumer advocacy, and now I'm in data protection. I also have experience in software as a service and event production. Event production, you might ask, how does that fit into all of this? But at some point in my life, I used to be a singer and I managed a band. And so because of that, somehow it just threw me into event production and event management. But that was a long time ago. It feels like another lifetime. I also have an MSc in legal technology from the University of Law, Moorgate. All right, here we go. So here's my content. We will be focusing on the Federal Republic of Nigeria, which is where I am from. We'll look at the past. We'll do a brief history lesson. We will look at the present, the AI aftermath, and the future, the good, the bad, and the ugly. All right. All right, so let's go a brief history lesson. So we'll start with the Nigerian Civil War. In the pre-colonial eras, the region was occupied by many indigenous ethnicities in different autonomous local settlements until the invasion of the British, leading up to 1914, when they were all united by Lord Lugard into a single, more cohesive British colony. And this was done for administrative purposes, just so that it's easier to manage that colony better. However, this culminated into a combination of issues. One moment, please. This culminated into a combination of issues, into a single moment: the impact of imperialism, the difficulties of assassination, and the dynamics of ethnic diversity. Now, stay with me. This story is really important. So we were unified, but we were still divided. Nigeria became an independent country on the 1st of October, 1960, and a republic on the 1st of October, 1963. However, the country was rife with strong internal fragmentation and long-standing regional stresses, from ethnic competitiveness, educational inequality, and economic imbalance, which was actually the most prominent, as the country had been segmented into 3 geographical regions, each of which was essentially controlled by an ethnic group: the West by the Yorubas, the East by the Igbos, and the North by the Hausa Fulanis. This picture here is the picture of an old Nigerian map. As you can see, let me try to explain. So we have the bottom left here, we've got the Western region. We have the bottom right here, which is the Eastern region. And then we have all of this, which is the Northern region. As you can see, it's not equally divided. As a matter of fact, I believe that some parts of Cameroon, that is a neighboring country, was sort of attached to the Northern region before the actual boundaries were carved out. But so because of this, conflicts were endemic because regional leaders were trying to protect their privileges. The South complained of Northern domination, as because they're obviously the largest number of people. And then the North feared that the Southern elite was bent on capturing power. And so, there were anti-Igbo riots. Anti-Igbo riots, massacres, and ethnic cleansing began after a group of army officers attempted to overthrow the government following the fraudulent and controversial elections of October 1965. The military administration was put under Major General Johnson Agui Ironsi, who I would say was Igbo. And this was, of course, one of the things that spurred the anti-Igbo riots. So because the military administration was put under him, he attempted to abolish the regions and impose a unitary government. So everything is all together. There's no segment. Everything is just, it's a unified nation. However, Aguiyi-Ironsi was assassinated. And then after several unsuccessful attempts to unite the country, University of Oxford alumni, Lieutenant Colonel, who later became General, Odumegwu Ojukwu, was elected by the Eastern Delegation, that is the collection of the Igbo states, and he was authorized to establish a sovereign state. And on May 30th, 1967, the Eastern region became a secessionist state under the name the Federal Republic of Biafra. Now, this was interpreted as an act of rebellion, and fighting broke out in early July. And within weeks, the conflict had escalated into a full-scale war. By January of 1970, Biafra was defeated and the war ended. The estimated death toll, about 3 million people. Right. So we'll go to the next topic, which is the AI aftermath. This picture here is a picture of the 4 presidential candidates who vied for the presidential position in the Nigerian 2023 elections. Now, the 2023 Nigeria elections was one of the most historic and controversial elections since the nation's independence. For the first time, there was a renewed sense of hope, especially among the younger generation who came out en masse to rallies in support of their candidates and to exercise their civic duty. Now, this was mostly motivated by the EndSARS movement of 2020. Now, let me explain a bit about the EndSARS movement. I will talk a bit about it later, but let me just give a brief background. There was a unit of the Nigerian police force that had been sort of carved out. They were called SARS. The full meaning was the Special Anti-Robbery Squad. And they were just, to tackle, the prevalent robberies and robbery-related violence in the country. However, they started to target a lot of young people. And at some point, the young people got tired, and they decided to protest. But unfortunately, it didn't end well. As I progress, I will talk a bit more about it. So, but because of this, because of what had happened, this happened in October of 2020. Because of that, young people were more motivated. For the first time, literally for the first time in the history of the country, young people were very, very interested in politics. And they wanted to have their say. They wanted their voices to be heard. Lots of sensitization programs had been done to get people to obtain their PVC. PVC is your permanent voter's card, so that they would be able to vote and exercise their civic duties. Also, for the first time, an outlier Igbo presidential candidate emerged. That is the man in the picture. The only other time Nigeria had an Igbo leader was its ceremonial title prior to its independence and just afterwards, and it was in person of Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe. And then also another reason why it was very controversial, I'm talking about the election, was that there was the precarious use of AI to discredit party candidates through misinformation, disinformation, and deepfake technology. So let's talk about these terms. All right, misinformation is the inaccurate, misleading, incomplete, selective, or half-truth information. It can also be when real events or facts are taken out of context. A common characteristic of misinformation is that it's usually spread by people who actually believe it to be true, much like a rumor. They actually believe it to be true. And oftentimes, it is lacking in a specific malicious intent. So there's no intent to harm. They just think that this rumor, this news, this information is true, and so they spread it. That is misinformation. And then we have disinformation, which, in contrast to misinformation, is misleading information with a malicious intent to harm or hurt, is deliberately designed to purposely mislead and deceive. And then we'll talk about deepfake. Deepfake is a digitally manipulated or generated image or audio that sometimes is used for satire or parody, but oftentimes is used to mislead. Now, deepfake technology, which is fondly known as the 21st century answer to photoshopping, can create really convincing but entirely fictional content from scratch, which in the wrong hands or used for malicious purposes poses a real great risk. It can be used to harass, to intimidate, to demean, and to destabilize. Deepfakes severely risk undermining trust in an information environment. They also make it easier for bad actors to dodge responsibility for their real words and actions on the pretext of having fallen victim to AI manipulated or generated content, as was the case also in Nigeria. So I had talked about the NSARS movement. So in October of 2020, when the military opened fire on peaceful youth protesters who demanded the disbandment of the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, also known as SARS, which was a unit of the Nigerian police, but instead were killing and unjustly arresting the youth. And then the government claimed that the pictures and the videos were doctored by AI, even though we watched this happen literally on Instagram Live, and residents around the area watched and recorded from their windows. Now, I remember that time. It was such a crazy period. I wasn't in the country at the time. I wasn't in Nigeria. I was here. I was in the UK. And watching this on Instagram Live, there's no way that could have been doctored. I mean, we heard the screams, we saw people running, we saw the bullets on the floor, we saw the blood, we saw people falling down. It was really intense. But again, the government said that the videos were doctored, pictures were doctored, that nothing of such, nothing like that happened. And this is what some scholars have described as the liar dividend. In the case of the 2023 Nigeria elections, so-called leaked audio recordings surfaced. The first instance was one of the presidential candidates who was discussing with his running mate and vice president and his campaign director in a supposed secret meeting on how they were planning to rig the election in the candidate's favor. This viral clip, at the time it was being fact-checked, had already generated 6,000 views, 496 shares, and 330 likes. Now, why this kind of content will have 330 likes, or why 330 people will like this, I guess we will never know. Then the second instance was of the outlier presidential candidate in a leaked phone call with the general overseer of the biggest church in Nigeria, with over 6 million members spread across 147 countries. They also own the largest church auditorium in the world. Now, this audio clip contained said candidates soliciting the cleric to urge his church members and speak to Christians to vote for him, citing the elections as a religious war. And now, Nigeria is a populous country of over 230 million people. And the two biggest religions that are practiced in the country are Christianity and Islam, with Islam being the largest, estimating at about 55% of the entire population, while Christianity is at 45%. And so a country that has already, I mean, what I'm saying is not news, because I'm sure, it has been in the news many times, but a country that has been plagued already with innumerable ethnic and religious conflicts, riots, and massacres, only needs a small spark to ignite another consuming flame. And AI, or the wrong use of it, was just that spark. Now, let me warn you, there are some images that I'm about to show that might be really triggering, so please permit me. Please just bear with me. So this image was one of the riots that took place after those leaked audio clips went viral, especially the second one, the one about the presidential candidate soliciting the cleric, urging his church members to vote for him, and citing the elections as a religious war, because people took to the streets. And in the past, Christianity and Islam, especially in my country, in Nigeria, they've never really blended. They've tried to live peaceably, but there are things that could just incite violence. And, this is one of it. So this is a picture. This is another one. This woman was attacked by thugs. And You can see her shirts bloodied. They had literally just butchered her face, and it was a horrific sight. Now, this picture, as you can see, it's some parts are in flames. So this is a huge market in Lagos. Lagos is one of the states in the western region, and some evil businesses were targeted by arsonists, and this was a result because of essentially the viral clip that had gone, that had just, it was terrible. It was terrible because evil people started to fear for their lives. They were being targeted. The businesses were being targeted. It was a horrific time. The resulting effects were protests and riots. Some died, and there were many that were injured. Vandals took to the businesses of the Igbos. Arsonists burned down sections of markets that were Igbo dominated. People were denied entry into polling units and centers by thugs because they were light skinned or looked Igbo. Now, there's a common misconception that if you're Nigerian and you're light skinned, you're probably Igbo. I don't know why. But yeah, in certain states, especially Lagos, thereby denying them their rights and liberties to exercise their civic duty. This picture that I put here was of one of those protests. And if you look at the placard that is being carried by this person, it says, "My Lagos, not your Lagos." And at the bottom here, it says, "You are here because of your business." Now, another worrisome thing about this image, about this picture, is that this man standing right here, who is sort of like leading the charge, leading this protest, is actually one of the special assistants to the Lagos state governor. So imagine someone with that kind of power and influence leading this type of protest. Now, Lagos State being the commercial center of Nigeria and the Igbos being naturally more commerce oriented, made Lagos a convenient settlement and may have been otherwise welcomed. However, as a Western state dominated by the Yorubas, they rejected a suitable gubernatorial candidate because his ethnicity was questioned. His father is Yoruba and his mother is Igbo. The viral audio clips were duly and thoroughly fact-checked, and it was discovered that they were deepfake audios using voice skins or voice clones. And its intention was to influence voters and provoke religious tensions by pitching religions and tribes against each other, thereby exhuming negative history. Now, remember that I had talked about the Biafran War and how the Igbos tried to segment themselves and be, a secessionist state because they were tired of the riots, they were tired of the massacres, they were tired of the killings. And, even after Biafra was defeated and the Federation won, ever since that time up until 2023, it had just been a case of, okay, we've forgotten past history. Let's now work together to live together in peace and in harmony. We are one country, we're one nation, we are united. But this just sort of exhumed that negative history, and therefore it widened the divide along ethno-religious lines. And my last topic would be the good, the bad, and the ugly. So the interesting thing is that the solution is never farther from the problem. In fact, ironically, the solution is often within the problem. And in this case, we would need to use AI to tackle the issues of AI. The world is increasingly becoming more synthetic, and this technology is not going anywhere. It is here to stay. We cannot wish it away, And so the necessity for the responsible adoption and utilization of AI cannot be overemphasized, especially in creating a roadmap for the public sector. If proper safeguards and rules on transparency are implemented, AI can actually be an extremely useful tool to improve the democratic process, particularly during election season. When appropriately deployed, it can be useful in going through massive amounts of data and automatically summarize public opinions or citizens' feedback, thereby helping politicians gain a better understanding of citizens' views and needs and the welfare of citizens. AI can also improve civic debate in managing political discussions and even act as a moderator by identifying tensions and nudging them away to less charged conversations. AI can also be used as a consensus builder, using large language models, LLMs, as consensus is a prerequisite for human cooperation and a key pillar of the democratic process. AI could have such a transformative effect in the policymaking process in the future when applied rightly. Researchers have shown that AI could actually be used to suggest or enact micro legislation, which involves making small modifications to proposed legislation that would have the biggest impact on a small scale or a narrow area of interest. Through its capacity to comb through large amounts of data, both historical and current, and then make recommendations. And so we can use open AI and would have open democracy. However, if care is not taken, the insidious impact that the use of AI in creating deep fakes, shallow fakes, fake news, and other synthetic media will no doubt create a zero trust society where people cannot or no longer bother to distinguish truth from falsehood. And when trust is eroded, it is easier to raise doubts, which births uncertainty and inevitably will lead to fear and desperation. And none of these, bode well for society or democracy at all. Now, already there are currently a few methods that can help in identifying and deterring AI-generated content from featuring in disinformation campaigns online, such as automated detection tools that can flag AI-generated content, and also watermarking tools, which involves the addition of a digital label to indicate that a content is AI-generated or to mark the metadata. Other solutions that are being brought forward include the development of instant fact checker tools, especially for social media users, because we live literally in a social media world, and creating a blockchain online ledger system, which will hold tamper-proof record of videos, pictures, and audio so that their origins and any kind of manipulations can always and easily be checked. None of these solutions is with absolute certainty, reliability, and or efficiency, but at least it is a step in the right direction. Now, creators, developers, and designers must create, develop, design, and build ethically and with integrity, with a proactive approach, not a reactive one, and ensuring that adequate guardrails are put in place. And also, I believe that policymakers all over the world, yes, we're beginning to have, countries that are enacting AI laws, but they're so few and far between. And so if policymakers all over the world would endeavor in creating and appropriating laws and legislation for the safeguarding of democratic processes against digital tampering and meting out justice to those found guilty as a warning to others. All right, that is the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for your rapt attention, and I'm happy to take any questions if you may have them. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nneka. That was brilliant. I don't think there's any questions for now, but where can people get in touch with you if they do have questions?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh, I should have thought about that actually. Well, I can be reached on LinkedIn. LinkedIn will be a great place instead of leaving my personal email. And my name. I could also send over the slides. Oh, well, it's been recorded already. So my name is there, and so they can get my name and send me any questions or whatever, anything at all that they might require on LinkedIn. LinkedIn will be great.
So
Thank